it's the second time I've seen the film, and it, yeah, it's just as vibrant and haunting as a first watch. So I'm a big fan, obviously, straight away. But you know, for me, it feels as if, to me, you know, this is very sort of powerful, haunting, and kind of impactful storytelling, and that you've been able to condense that range of emotions on screen, you know, visually and sonically, into a very kind of like tight nine minutes. You know, like a 9-minute running time is just a like sensational moment. Personally, I like the way that it blends genres as well. You know, but it does it in such a sort of sensitive and nuanced way, that it really brings a kind of like authenticity, and kind of like an honesty to sort of grief and loss. So it really, just even from a personal experience, it feels so sort of real. There are ways that you've kind of translated the kind of anchorless feeling of losing someone that's close to you, or that you love. And of course we'll get into unpacking some of that in a moment. I mean, I just first opening question, Mevis, can we just talk about your sort of journey and background as a creative and filmmaker, and you know what are some of the things and experiences that have influenced your particular kind of focus on the way in which we live our psychological lives? Because that's something that really strikes me about this film, is that you're able to really translate what happens inside us internally when we're faced with the challenges that life throws at us.
Firstly, I want to say thank you everyone for coming here and taking time out of your day. I really appreciate you coming to see the film and supporting it. Thank you so much. And to answer your question, I've previously worked in mental health and studied psychology for numerous years, so I draw from that mostly. I believe studying psychology really has helped me grow as a filmmaker and has influenced a lot of the work that I do, because I tend to draw from that and experiences with people and understanding what joins us as human beings in terms of experiences that we all experience, but individualize it at the same time. And when it came to loss, I wanted to explore more so the loss of a friend, because a lot of the times when I watched films or when I read on the news and stuff like that, it was always like focusing on the family, how the family feel when they've lost someone. But in reality, do they speak about the loss of a friend and how that affects the friend that's left behind? And on top of that, if the loss of a friend is by someone who's taken their life, it then impacts them differently on how the trauma they've left for the people that are behind. And I wanted to focus more on that trauma of the people left behind rather than on the trauma the person faced in order to do that to themselves. So that's what led me to explore that, and I tend to draw a lot of I look within friendships, within myself, and within past work experiences, and I draw from that in order to write stories for my characters.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like it takes you on a journey, but sort of ultimately, and this is what I like about the kind of the genre influences. You know, that it's a ghost story, it's a thriller, it's all of these different ways of crafting, crafting a story, but it's ultimately redemptive. You know, so there's a way through these sort of challenges that we experience in life. Sonja, I was just going to ask, how did you guys meet, and just on the build up to the start of this project? Because watching the film and then having the opportunity to talk to you briefly in the cafe bar, I love these kind of like moments where you're able to sort of meet an artist and sort of see the sort of distance between the work and the person. It's like the person on screen is not the Sonja that I met in the bar in the most positive sense, and it's sort of to access those psychological spaces and to feel comfortable on set and location and to do. I mean, do you guys know each other? You know, have you had a relationship before this production? And then I guess, like, what was that kind of? How did you start that conversation? What was some of the preparation? Because it's quite a weighty role, isn't it, to jump into that psychological space, and then be able to communicate with your director in a way that's nuanced, and that really comes across. There's a relationship there, and I'm kind of trying to find out what is that.
Right. So hi guys. Mevis and I, we met at a course, acting course basically in London, and I just remember us just never working together in the acting courses. We never got to be paired together and work directly together, but we saw each other's work during these classes. And anyway, the first time I saw her acting, I thought she was incredible. And I didn't know she was actually thinking the same thing about me. And one time I do remember being outside of the classroom where we were doing the classes, and she was like, I would love to work with you, like I write stuff, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, I don't believe you. But yeah, I mean, a few years later she came up with it, and she messaged me saying, Sonja, like I told you, I'm writing something for us. And I'm still like, yeah. No, and then it happened. We've always had a good relationship with each other, friendly relationship, professional relationship, and we have connected a lot of how we think alike as well. I think that has been one of the main points working together, where I'm very open to following instructions. I always say that I'm a follower basically, and I love being directed. And I think with Mevis directing me, and still previous to that having that friendly relationship with her, it made it easier for her to give me instructions and easy for me to follow those instructions. And when we started making the film, she gave me a lot of freedom to experience this character as well. I mean, for me with the character, I always think, you know, you don't get over grief, and you have heard that before. You don't get over grief, you just learn to live with it basically, and I kind of wanted to portray that through this, and just playing through my own experiences, and you know, and I always like to put, I know I'm acting, but I always like to put a bit of myself into any character that I have. And yeah, I think Mevis, she saw that as well, and yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that translates, hopefully you guys will agree with me, that translates to screen, the authenticity of that relationship. And I guess what I was trying to go for is performances like that generally come out of two positions: trust and a really good kind of working creative relationship, or unfortunately kind of exploitative practices. So it's so lovely to be able to see something that's so sort of like emotionally authentic, and also kind of that, as an audience member, having that instinctual feeling that it's coming from a very grounded, trusting, creative relationship. For me personally, I feel as if that comes across on screen. You know, I was just sort of moving. I'm going to sort of jump around a little bit, but the next question is kind of falls back into sort of pre-production, where you were on the journey towards BFI Network, but also Blak Wave as well, and just sort of talking about that initial experience, because I'm assuming that the film was made, or at least when you were starting to talk about pre-production, it was COVID essentially. So how did you guys, number one, like how did you guys find each other? How did you work together? And also, sort of, what was it like working with Blak Wave and BFI? And then I would assume Zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom. How did it all come together?
So I applied for the BFI New Voices scheme, and with that we were paired with 2 different production companies, and including that was Blak Wave Blak Wave Productions. And I really was eager to work with Mina and Mike, and was really excited when I got paired up with them. And this was just more in the development process, so this wasn't even at the point of being selected for BFI yet. So with the Blak Wave team, I was given a script editor who then read through the script and helped me concise it a bit more, shorten it a bit more, because it was meant to be a bit much longer. So we had to concise in order to fit around the budgets that BFI tend to give for certain levels. And upon doing that, we then, with Blak Wave Media, Blak Wave Production, we then worked with the producer, Uwella Jackson, and she's an amazing producer. So we were able to concise a great application form for the BFI and sent it out for the BFI, and this was independent with Blak Wave Productions, and we sent it through, and we were lucky enough to get the funding, which we then was an amazing thing, because at first I was really anxious, like, oh, maybe I'm not going to get it, and then I go out and I was like, oh, now I have to make the film. I was like, oh, this is something different I hadn't planned for. So that was
right.
Yeah, that was really exciting. At the time, I was in the process of finishing my previous film, so I had planned to have a film break essentially. And then I was like, oh, no breaks. I just immediately swept into this one, which is really exciting at the same time, because I was able to keep in a similar sort of filmmaking mindset of that, getting the script done, getting the process, getting all the crew, trying to see if I can get the same crew back.
Just in that initial moment, maybe it's really interesting, because there's like a bit of crossover in regards to Pierre's keynote this morning. One of my questions was around sort of like project management, well-being, in that moment of transition.
Yeah.
And I mean, did you know that this was possibly going to be, you know, up until that point, it was this story that was pitched, thinking about the kind of gravitas of the material.
Heavy.
Did you get a moment for well-being just in that break, that crossover bit between 2 projects, or was it kind of like, oh wow, here we go?
Yeah, well, it was kind of a bit of both, because the previous one I had mostly acted in it, and my producer and co-director helped me process that and helped me direct that. So she's my producer at the time, Nimala. She's an amazing producer. She helped me really understand my character and helped me kind of stay in the creative zone and pull away from being bombarded with so much information.
Yep.
So then, when I came to working on this, my mind was a little bit clearer and was more in a creative sense. So I was able to transition it a bit better, and I have a great network of friends, so everyone was able to assist me in any way I could, and especially with things like location and props and stuff. A lot of stuff I didn't have to buy. I just looked around my friendship and I was like, well, I saw that in your room before. Let me use it, please. So that was really interesting to have like a lot of support from my network of friends and being able to speak to them about the process of film and the kind of heaviness that the story was going to bring, especially because I had to kind of put myself in that mindset in writing it and really feel my character's feelings. And there's times where I would be writing and then I'll start crying. I'm like, well, this is not me, like, forget about it. This is your character. And then I'll just be like writing like in my own tears. I'm like, this is hard. But being able to speak to my friends and understand that and know that it wasn't me, it was someone else that's feeling those emotions helped me process it a bit better.
So that kind of sense of sort of like networking and well-being when the pressure sort of starts to begin, and transitioning between projects. And I'm always really fascinated by those questions, because We all like to think that these are really happy and exciting times when we get these magnificent opportunities, and it's time to kind of like, show and prove. But actually, a lot of the time, the human experience is like, here it all begins, and here's the stress. And I think it's that networking thing and that triangulation, and that's what I'm trying to sort of get to is, what was it like working with the Blak Wave guys in relation to that? And I think like having Uella as producer.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
That was really interesting. When I knew that I was potentially getting the BFI funding, I did speak to Mina and Mike and I asked if I could get a Black producer for the project, and they were able to. They knew Uella previous, so they had already, and I didn't know this, but they already had Uella on book for that already. They kind of had already spoken to her about it, and they were waiting for me basically to have a chat with her essentially. So by the time I had a chat with her and Uella, and I got along, and it was just really amazing because she's so collaborative as well, because that's what I was looking for mostly, is someone who's also collaborative at the same time, but also she's very quick and understands the workings of BFI, as she had already done a few BFI projects. So that was really interesting to know that Mina and Mike had already processed that and had already started that process, and I didn't have to worry too much about it. All I had to do was basically say, yes, I'm happy with that. And on top of that, working with Mike and Mina has just been amazing because I have admired them as filmmakers prior. I knew them prior to that. I worked with Mina for a year prior because Mina was actually the person that gave me my first job in the creative industry. When I decided to transition from mental health to getting into the creative industry. So she was the first person that really welcomed me into the industry and gave me my first job with basically little to no experience. So that was already a great start to our friendship. And then Mike has always, we've met over Zoom on previous networking events when I've been pitching different scripts and stuff like that, and he's always been forthcoming and messaged me and emailed me and said, I'm really excited about your story that you're writing. So, and he really wanted to work with me in the future, so I was really excited when I was selected to work with Blak Wave. So I'm really honoured to work with them, and I hope to work with them in the future.
Yeah, I mean, like, and then I think for me, it's back to the kind of like traditional technical questions, I guess, which was, how long was the shoot, and how much, and actually, really, like Sonja, how much time did you both have to kind of? I mean, were you allowed the kind of privilege enough time to build the character a bit beforehand together before getting onto set, or?
On my own, I think. So how I tried to get into character, I listen to a lot of music, and I connect a lot with like, it's gonna sound sad, but melancholic music and movement music, and it's just instrumental, classical, and because it's a lot about grief and loss, so I try to listen to more of that, and actually, there are a lot of many versions of ourselves, where the happy version, the sad version, the experiencing grief version, and things like that. So I tried to get into the sad and grief version of myself, and that was while listening to this kind of music. We had 2 days to film. I think for me that was the hard thing. But no, I mean, once I got into the onto set, and I knew what Mevis as well had in mind, and I spoke to Mevis. We stayed up for hours the night before, didn't we? Like rehearsing with each other, telling me what she wants in the lines, and throughout the script, and me just trying to translate that right in front of her, right there, like on the sofa, basically. So I think, we know each other a lot, and like I said earlier, with that relationship that we have, I knew what she wanted, and you know, she trusted me to do it. So, but yeah, the 2 days you have to crunch it up. So, you know, it was fast. But no, it was pretty cool. I found it like, it was how do you say, it was I don't know, it was so exciting. I was so excited. I think I was the most awake out of everyone, I think, because everyone was so tired and everything. But I was excited. I remember someone telling me, I've never seen someone so excited at 2 a.m. in the morning, 3 a.m. in the morning, after filming like 16 hours already. No, but I think because I was so excited to do this, you know, I kind of broke my weight into that energy. I don't know how to be honest, but
I mean, I think all of that preparation and you know, I think the kind of sincerity in your relationship together, and Blak Wave, and just that process, all of that translates onto the screen, I think. And I think so, just honouring that process, and then getting to that moment where you realise we have 2 days to actually make this, to actually kind of technically make this happen. All of that preparation is mega important, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it does, you know, it translates onto screen.
Yeah, definitely. We had to change some of the work that we had planned to do, and because we had so little time, the idea of the film had to slightly change in order to kind of get it fully in that time. And I had to prep myself the day before and look through my script and realize, if the producer came up to me or the AD came up to me and said, we don't have time, you have to cut a scene, which one are you cutting now? I have to be ready so I don't faff and start getting flustered and lose everyone's trust. So I had to prepare what 2 scenes can go from each day, and that was tough to think about that.
I mean, were there any kind of compromises that you had to make?
Luckily enough, I didn't have to cut anything in terms of filming. We filmed everything, and then we had to cut some stuff during editing. But in terms of filming, I was able to film everything that I needed to. Everyone really did an amazing job in helping getting everything done and working really hard. But yeah, I had to. So the character of Adora, we changed a little bit of that in order to compromise on getting everything done, because that was supposed to start off more as a slight silhouette and growing more into a full-formed human being, just to show the development of grief, because it starts off something you don't really feel and ignoring, and then as it develops more, it becomes more of a thing that you have to deal with, which then kind of I wanted
emotional memory translated onto screen. But I think all of that comes across. So even within that compromise, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the kind of question I was going to ask next, and that really is it. It's kind of like what are some of the unforeseen challenges that you were kind of that you were possibly not prepared for, because that always happens, I think, on a shoot or during that creative process. There was some sort of odd curveball that appears out of nowhere, but then also kind of like moments which you feel were really triumphant, that you feel as if, you know, I could see that challenge coming, and we prepared as a team and got through it. Yeah. Is there anything in particular that stands out for both of you over that 2 days?
Yeah, so for me particularly, it was location. We lost, I think, was it 4 locations prior to filming?
Wow.
So it was, I think we first lost the first one 2 weeks before, then from there it snowballed into losing location. So it was really tough, kind of having to panic, thinking, are we going to have to push the shoot? But we were lucky enough to find a location. A friend of mine, a neighbor, decided to help me with and give me her house in order to film in. And the challenge that came with that was that because we had used the house in the past, we had to completely transform her house and her room, and it had a lot of bulky stuff, and some of it was exercise equipment that we had to carry out, like a treadmill. So the whole crew had to come along and carry this treadmill out of this house in order for us to film and transform and change it all around and then carry it. So it was a lot of things that we had to change, and luckily enough, everyone was really on board and was helpful and really worked really hard into getting everything done. And while we were, because we had 2 locations, we filmed outside for the car scenes. So we filmed in Kingswood somewhere. And whilst we were filming there, we had another part of the crew basically setting up the house and making sure it was ready. But by the time we got there, they didn't have the keys, so then we had to it was a lot of rushing and helping each other out. But because everyone was so on ball, we didn't have that time to panic because we were just trying to get everything done.
Just really quickly, how long from sort of pre-production to the finished article? So
outside pre-production, I think I got to work with Blak Wave in April of 2021, and then Blak Wave signed it off I think the last week of March in terms of edit and fully giving it up to BFI. So about a year. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, brilliant. I really kind of just want to sort of wrap it up with a couple of questions just around I mean, my excitement for this is is both representationally on screen, in front of the camera and behind the camera, the diversity and richness of the project. So my question to both of you would be, why is representation important in these current times? And I think and for me, I can feel the kind of weight of that question as well, particularly in regards to also the kind of explorations of loss and mental health around the narrative of the film. That's something that really struck me, is the story behind the film, but then also representation on screen, and thinking about my own personal experience and the experience of friends over the last 2 years in relation to sort of loss and mental health, really struck me in a really powerful way, and I could really kind of relate to those 2 friends on screen, So in relation to that, representation for both of you guys, why do you feel that's so important at this stage in time?
For myself, I'm a Black filmmaker, so already I know the barriers that I face. So I really want to try and help put a voice out there for Black filmmakers or people of color filmmakers, just because both in front of the screen and behind the screen there isn't that many of us. It's a growing number, but it's still quite limited, and especially behind the scenes on set, a lot of there is limited numbers when you're trying to look for filmmakers that you can work with on set, especially people of color, most especially in the demographic of women. So I really wanted to work with that and try and get the people of color more opportunities, and also write stories that basically encompass people of color in terms of, I didn't want to write a story that's mostly about the struggle of a Black person, but I wanted to write a story about just a human being that just happens to be Black or Asian or any sort of demographic. So I tend to write stories that really cover a lot of womanhood and the struggles of people of color, really. And I tend to explore that a lot, and I try to see if I can hire people of color in my films as much as I can. And when I was working with Blak Wave, I did try and speak to them and see if we can get at least 50% of people of color in the crew as well, and that included even people in post-production as well. So we tried our best, and we're trying to develop that even more and more as much as we can as we go along.
Amazing.
Yeah, for me, I mean, coming from experience, I come from a Latino family, and you know, in the Latino culture, it's getting better, that's what I have to say, but you know, you learn how to swallow that grief inside of you, that sadness that you have inside, that maybe you don't even know why you have that sadness, but you know, you feel like you can't talk to your family, your sisters, your mom, your dad, you know, you can't. I really wanted to put that out, because for me mental health has become really, really important, and since realizing, you know, that you can speak to people about it, you can show it another way as well, like representing it through a film, and you know, people watching it, that's amazing, that's, you know, and to see you know, people of colour as well that have taken part into it, and who feel actually the same thing that I have felt as a Latina as well, is comforting to know that there are other people who have felt the same, and that you're not the only one, basically, and it just needs to be spoken about, so you know, we can grow, we can learn how to manage our emotions better. And I mean, with experience, I think we have responsibility as well. We can kind of, you know, we're getting older, so I'm 28, and I feel like I have the responsibility for at least my little sister to be more comfortable to speak to me, or to speak to someone. And yeah, I feel really strong about that, so I'm hoping when my sister sees this, she can open a conversation about it with anyone, basically. And yeah, same for you guys. And yeah, I think it's important.
I wanted to kind of end on a positive, which is, but only if you want to, which is sort of, are you working on projects at the moment that you're excited about? If it's top secret, you don't have to say anything. But I mean, you know, if there's, because you know, this is such a great film, and thank you for gifting us with this kind of moment of sort of representational authenticity, I think, more than anything else. And it would just be, yeah, it'd be nice to know what projects you're currently working on or looking forward to. But don't worry, if it's top secret, you don't have to say anything.
Do you want to start?
Yeah. Well, I think my big project so far is that I'm going to do next year is I'm going to LA for a week. I'm basically going to have like loads of workshops, acting workshops, meeting cast directors and script writers, and yeah, I'm just trying to get into that, want to get into that and taste the Hollywood kind of experience that other people have. And yeah, and I think going from there, I would love to keep doing it, basically, keep strengthening the skills, basically. And yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting, and I can't wait.